Welcome once again to Crossroads TV, China experts here on the ground in Shanghai. This is the online component of China Crossroads, where I've run hundreds of talks over the last 13 years right here in Shanghai. As always, we have my co-host Sven Agton, author of Adventures in China's Economy and a CEO himself. And really happy to be welcoming Ian Anderson today. He's spoken 3 times for us on M&A in China, on management in China, and this happens to be his last week here in China. He's leaving in 2 days, so we're really happy to catch him. And I want to kick off the questions just by kind of like giving you an opportunity to reflect on your time here in China. He's been here 10 years, working 8 years for Synthomer China, a chemicals company, a British chemicals company, and has a wealth of experience. And, you know, expats are always coming in and out, so we often, say goodbye to our friends here. And I want to give him a chance to reflect on his experience, but also ask you the first question, and that would be, what about this time here has been disappointing to you, unexpected, or maybe pleasant?
Okay, well, let's start with the, what did you say, disappointing, unexpected, pleasant. Unexpected is very difficult, I think, because now after 9-10 years, I expect anything. And I was I try to think back to the beginning, little things here and there maybe, and actually much less unexpected than I thought. So maybe it's safer than I thought, maybe it's cleaner than I thought.
Yeah.
All that, but nothing really. But disappointing, I think I can pick up more. Yeah. I think there are 3 disappointments, and I've also reflected on this and quite a lot. One is I failed. I am a modern languages graduate from Cambridge University. I speak 3 European languages, or used to, including plus English, and I failed to become fluent in Mandarin. There is a particular reason for that, which is linked to the second disappointment, is that I failed to leave China with a lady who wanted to move back to the UK with me. Mm-hmm. And attached to that disappointment is I left quite a lot of money with her, which is it, right? So that's so I'm a bit of a Western cliche, right?
But the second thing you can still solve. You still have 1 day, right?
Yeah.
Not the first thing, though.
No, I can't solve it. And the third thing relates to what you just said is M&A. I never actually managed to land an acquisition for my company, which I think, quite achieve what I wanted to achieve in a company, which will no doubt come to later. Those are my 3 big disappointments. Yeah.
We'll get to some of the business questions in a second, but I want to stick to the personal now. And, you said that maybe a lot was not unexpected. I mean, if I were asking you this 6-7 years ago, would you have a different answer? Just get used to China, or? I
suppose because I was sent here. I was in those days never very good at reflecting, and I just didn't quite just turn up. And I was going back and forth quite regularly initially, so I didn't really feel I was living in China. I'd also been traveling here very regularly for 7 years before I arrived. Right. So it wasn't completely new to me. It was a bit different in 2014 to 2007. Unexpected. Well, there are little things I remember, like the guy, one of my business partners, it was quite a hot day, and he was, the Beijing bikini? Well, he had a Shandong shankini or something because he was rolling up his trouser leg during a meeting.
Right.
Or, things like that. A guy that I was at my first meeting in Dongbei, and this guy comes in with his entourage, like mafia, having left his black screened Audi outside, and said, "I want a JV." And I said, "Okay. Maybe you just let me tell you something about your company." He said, "We are Beifeng. We're part of Beifeng. We're a state-owned armaments company." Great, I said. I was looking for, so little things like that. I think maybe the directness in business, it was the scruffiness of the business partners tending to indicate how wealthy they were.
Right.
The directness, things like that. Yeah, little things like that, but after a while you get used to it, and I can hardly remember now that it was a surprise.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people are surprised by how direct Chinese business people can be, and it's supposed to be a more reserved, shy culture, but not in business anyway, not at all.
Not like Japan and even Taiwan.
Sure.
They are reserved, yeah.
Well, you had the distinction of being the first guest who was sent here by your company. The others we've had so far either came here as a passion, interested in China, or actually are Chinese. Yeah. So I wonder if you might have any thoughts for those who have the opportunity to be posted here or want that kind of thing?
Maybe another question: were you the only volunteer to want to come to China?
On that one, I was an executive committee of the multinational chemical company working at a time in Germany. I flew too close to the sun, and my boss was having a nervous breakdown because he couldn't handle the integration, and I was caught in the crossfire. And CEO was trying to send him to China. He refused, and eventually he said, "Oh, Anderson can go to China," and I was sent to China. So I was the only. No, he'd tried a few others before.
Yeah, right.
So come back. Yeah, your question that what advice would I give to someone coming to do my sort of job, if you like? Now,
yeah,
don't. Yeah,
but it sounds like your boss made a bad move. I mean, it seems like he wanted to put you in some remote corner, but you've done relatively well here and grown the business, and perhaps he didn't expect that. Yeah.
No, he famously in 2017, I remember one visit, he said to me through gritted teeth, "Why are you so successful?" And when I arrived, I'm a guy who likes some adventure. One of my big regrets in life was not having gone abroad earlier.
Yeah.
I was offered a job in South Africa during apartheid days, and my wife at the time was half Indian. That wasn't going to work. So yeah, I just thought, well, this is wonderful. And China in 2014 was still quite a lively place, full of opportunity, fun. And I found this company which I had helped set up 5 years previously already. I knew the people, and I guess one thing that did surprise me is how over-respected you are. I was, I'm a Westerner, Cambridge University, and it's like this, which I found a bit irksome after a while. But it was a really good experience, China, just coming here, and I had all this opportunity in front of me. I could mold the team, develop myself. It's a fascinating place. The culture's different, the business culture's different. It's go, go, go. There's a lot to learn. But with that company, what was great is they were so supportive. I never felt scared. I never felt worried about anything. Sometimes, here and there, but no, I felt very comfortable. Yeah.
You mean your Chinese team, right?
Yeah, Chinese team. Right. Yeah,
and very respected too.
Very respected. Yeah, very respected. And in the end, actually, you feel quite loved because I developed them.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like a family,
Yeah.
It has its weaknesses, but no, I just found, hey, thanks for sending me here. Yep. And then, of course, as I said, Western cliche, I met a young lady, my marriage fell apart, but I saw it as an opportunity.
Right.
Which in the end it wasn't. But it was all until 2019 when the company changed the structure to one of those awful matrix structures. So the people in China report into head office. It was great.
If you look at all these business surveys from the German Chamber of Commerce and European Chamber, very often within the top three is always that expats in China are complaining or have trouble with communicating with headquarters.
Yeah.
What's happening in China? Was it for you the same experience?
Not so much. I think I've always been a little bit weak on managing upwards. I got plenty of opportunity to do it, but I think what I
beautiful term, managing upwards.
Yeah, well, it's important.
Can I translate to doing politics within the company?
Politics, exactly. Doing politics. Yes, I think I managed to communicate, but because remember I'd been sent here by someone who didn't want to come to China. He eventually left in 2020. They weren't interested. Well, they professed interest because they had to, because the consultants at a certain time had told them you must go to China, but they were borderline racist and very un-Chinese. So but you're right. I mean, it is a topic, and I think it's sometimes overworked because I think that a lot of Chinese managers go a bit native.
Yeah.
And in the end, they're the boss, and you've got to think, what do they want, and try and find some alignment. And I think we tend to probably shout and preach at them a bit about how China's different and China wants this, and you've got to be, China speed. And I think we multinational bosses sometimes preach a bit too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, I attended recently. In fact, Frank, there was a talk by Zach, I can't remember his name. That was very good.
Yeah,
that line.
talking about HQ. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've given 3 talks for us, and the most distinctive one was right after lockdown, and we were by the lake. There was no way to actually have a talk because everything was shut down for the virus, and you spoke by that beautiful lake. And I remember you were talking about the chemicals industry and how you have to be in China. I guess half of all chemicals in the world are made in China. Is that correct? So
broadly,
your industry, your former company is investing like gangbusters.
Yep.
And so, last couple episodes of this channel, we've talked about, the China market, what's really happening. What would you say to those who are hesitant about, expanding or investing in China?
Okay, yeah, I mean, first of all, yes, you're right about the figures. It's about pushing 50%, and as Europe declines, it's probably going to accelerate in percentage, but about 50% of the chemical industry here is about 11% of China's GDP. In America, it's about 3%. So China's the manufacturer of the world, and almost everything you manufacture ultimately has some chemicals in it. But if you are in China and you're really well invested, I would double down. Double down. Yeah, because this is a big market. There are still opportunities. You've got to have differentiation in technology or scale or possibly channel, but double down. Double down. Don't spend too long. Don't overthink it. On the other hand, if you're very weak here or not here at all, which is a few, get out. Or divest the bits that aren't working. So that's not me. I've heard that advice from many. It's really double down or divest, I think.
Well, I think China in many ways becomes a playground for multinationals, not necessarily for SMEs anymore. Of course, they need a different model nowadays. But related to that, you said one of the failures you had was to acquire, do an acquisition in China. Why was that actually? I mean, you don't want to double down, but why didn't you acquire anything?
Very good question, and that's actually, I think, why I decided to give this talk. I think.
Thank you for that.
Yes, I think I didn't quite ever. I was probably too demanding on all the criteria, and if there's one thing, it was I personally wasn't bold enough. I should have really. I won't go too much detail at the time, but I almost landed one, and he changed it at the 11th hour after the non-binding offer, and I should say, okay, I'll get that for you, and I'd have to go back and get it sorted. But I didn't push hard enough on head office when I believed in it, or I didn't. That's basically it. I wasn't bold enough, and I should have taken a few personal risks because I had nothing to lose really. It was 4 or 5 years off retirement. So I think it was a personal thing. I think the whole process was well done. We had some good targets, some crap targets, but
So it was just a personal.
I think it's largely personal, but it's also pretty difficult to find a private company that is good to buy.
Yes.
On the other hand, I was also after one listed company, and finally, as I was leaving, we were chasing an SOE, but with the help of a broker then.
I think in general, what I always see when Chinese companies, especially the private ones, they could be huge, of course, in China. They have a history of maybe 30 or 40 years. It's still a family-owned business. They could be listed, but still a big share is in family hands. And of course, because of the culture, it is very top-down, of course. And secondly, they only trust the family and relatives. They tend to focus a lot on these kind of family relationships and things they know, less on processes. So if you acquire such a company, would that be a complete different story? Because there are no processes, or very few of them actually. How are you going to deal with that?
I think you can generalize, but I think there's so many different family-owned companies or private-owned companies. I mean, one I've been consulting for in Shandong. I mean, everyone must be related or friends of friends and that. So you would never buy that. You just couldn't handle it. Others you find where for example, they know that, so they brought in multinationally trained management team. There are no family members maybe, and they're more forward-looking. They're easier to buy. Or you get one, I remember my second company, I was very involved in integration. They had better systems like CRM and the ERP system than we did as a Dutch multinational. When I say better, more appropriate for the market. So and it's very important to do this pre-offer due diligence with your own team. Chinese people, multifunctional, and not only meeting the owners and the boss, but also meeting the next level. And then I think there's always a risk, but I think it's just finding the right company. They do exist, and because these private companies are evolving.
So if you talk about as an acquisition, and of course you look at all the numbers and due diligence, and there's always this mistrust in China data in general. How would you look at it? Do you have any experience that these companies like completely overstating their sales or understating to pay less taxes?
I think,
or are the data accurate?
No. I mean, I remember famously in Hebei once asking, we asked, so are you compliant for tax? And he said, no.
Why would we?
We need to make a profit. Didn't quite. Are you compliant for social security with your employees? No. And by the way, we've got another company here. You need to. But they were using KPMG as advice, and I think, and he came up to us. Ian, don't worry, we can sort it. And I think, there are plenty. I mean, almost every private company and probably some multinationals are not compliant. So there's a lot of good lawyers who know how to handle this. You can put as a reserve in the purchase acquisition price. I think it's about how non-compliant they are. And there are good lawyers who can find that out now. I think, I don't think that's too much of a big deal. What you've got to understand is the risk, for example, in the distribution business, which is very much dependent on sales relationships. You find there's one or two people who've got a very big chunk of the sales. Why have they got that? Yes, okay, And you figure it out and say, well, if we lose that, the value of the company. So you just have to work out the risk.
Yes, it's a different mindset.
And I was really pleased to have such a good local team to support me. Plus a few advisors, but mainly it was that local team who normally one of them had brought the acquisition to me, to us.
How would you say, if you talk about your team or the Chinese teams you met in terms of acquisition, how do you think they have evolved from, let's say, 10 years ago compared to now? It used to be that expats came here with a lot of technical skills or management skills, but the market has changed a lot. There are different requirements. So where do you think the Chinese have really made enormous strides forward in management skills or technical skills or whatever?
Technical skills for sure. I mean, I'm thinking my team and other teams that come on, they learn technical skills very fast. I mean, I think that's China, so that's not really a problem. I think, and you meet people in China who are as skilled or more skilled than their counterparts in the West. I think in terms of leadership and management, that's not quite as evolved, and but a lot of, particularly companies, multinationals do quite a lot of training. Being in multinationals, I think employees are learning. We certainly, in my last company, we did a lot of leadership training. And also giving example. I was hopefully leading by example as well. I think that is evolving, and some of the best Chinese companies are also professionalizing. I remember trying to buy this company, and think, "Well, you're doing a lot here." No, I think it's evolving, but not there yet. On the other hand, are multinationals fully attuned to managing in China? I don't know. But,
Well, this gets us to the topic of management, and your last talk was called "An Imperfect Laoban," An Imperfect Boss. Nice, modest title. I wonder if you'd tell us what you mean by that. In what ways were you imperfect? About the management culture here, etc.
We're all imperfect. Obviously.
Yeah, we're all imperfect, and yes, I mean even Frank. In fact, well, first of all, I needed you always like a catchy title,
Well, that's right. That's the key.
If I came in and said a reasonably good, memoirs,
but it was
memoirs of a reasonably good boss. No, there are three. One is, there's a book, I can't remember it's not very well written, but the concept's good. American book called The Imperfect Leader. Yeah. It's about, understanding your behaviors and how your blind spots and then managing them. And that was one thing I wanted to sort of indicate. No one would have understood this apart from me, by the way. And you wanted a flashy title. Secondly, it was that in China, I realized when I arrived, people thought I was perfect. Because I went to Cambridge, and I'd come from the UK, and I must be, and I said, hey, look, if you follow me, like the proverbial lemmings, not that I mentioned lemmings, but we are going to all go over the cliff together because I don't understand this market. So that I tried to get the concept, you've got to be imperfect, really recognize that and challenge me. Yeah? And the third one, I wasn't perfect. And that's because I, as I said, didn't achieve quite what I wanted to achieve. Yeah. So it was all those three themes. And I had a number of my people there. And I think one of the biggest successes I got was actually getting them, encouraging my team to challenge me and say, you are much better than I am in that particular thing. Overall, I am the boss, and my judgment is overall probably superior, but I don't know about that. I'm a hopeless negotiator, yeah, and I don't speak Chinese properly, yeah. So yeah.
So the very fact that you admit your weaknesses is something that a typical Chinese boss would never do, of course.
And I realized I shouldn't do it too fast, too deep.
Yeah,
and
because it undermines the authority.
Yeah, it undermines exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's you make a good point, and I had to watch that. Yeah.
It's a different way of managing in China than well. I think what in the end of the day we're dealing with people all over the world, so they're very basic skills. I mean, they all want a secure job, good stuff. That's all the same, but there are some nuances in the whole story. I think, right?
Yeah, I think. I think managing in China, you can exaggerate how different it is. I'd come from Germany, where I had a much bigger. I was in charge, I think, about 1,000 people worldwide. A lot of them in Germany, and there are big differences between managing Germans to. I mean, you're from Belgium, yeah? So
yes.
You'll know that yourself. German, you work for a German company. Yeah? Yes. So Germans are different to the UK. I've managed in America a little bit. Chinese, yeah, they're different as well, but fundamentally, the same principles apply. I think in China, as mentioned, this excessive respect and deference, and a lack of ability to summarize and think abstractly and laterally, very task focused. And then this whole sort of the family, sort of the company's a family. It's one of the family and the company and the tongshui, this three sort of, So, that's, but again, that evolved during the period I was there, not in our company. So fundamentally, you can use the same tools, just different nuanced, I'd say. Yeah.
So when you're leaving now, your staff is sad about that because their father has left. Is leaving, sorry.
Well, I left the main company I worked for, Synthomer. I left in July 2022. Yes. It was quite an emotional occasion. I'm still in touch with most of them. We remember in Peace Hotel. They were. So now I'm, no one's. Actually, a few people are sad, but that I've been working with, but no, they were sad at the time, but I think they've got over it.
Well, I hope.
Well, except that my successor is although he's Canadian citizen, he's Chinese, and he is a top-down Laoban, and the atmosphere is terrible.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of your staff came for your last talk. That was after you quit, so I think there's some loyalty and emotion.
Oh, very. Sure. They're very. We're still very close. In fact, I've got a farewell lunch with one of them tomorrow. Yeah.
I think it's always interesting. There's always a very big perception that Chinese are untrustworthy. I found exactly the opposite.
No.
They're very trustworthy, very loyal.
I mean, absolutely, Sven. I think that's a really good point because I've just done 2 consulting projects for business partners I've known for 7 years, and people go, watch, they won't pay you. I mean, you have to work. You can lose it. But the trust is very deep.
Yes.
And with my employees, almost all of them, and a lot of business partners, you find out quite quickly the ones you can't trust.
Yes.
Right. We lost trust in one important case because we failed to deliver on promise on a particular new product. But no, I think that's something I really enjoy. The trust here. Yeah.
Well, it all makes sense. I mean, it's all consistent. It's actually a low trust society, right?
Yeah.
But because you can't trust strangers as much once you develop the relationships, they're very loyal and trustworthy. It's all 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah, that's what I'm told.
How we understand it anyway.
Yeah.
We've had, I don't know, this is our 4th farewell. We do our 4th one, I suppose, on YouTube. but you've made a huge contribution to our community, as I've said before, for the last 3 years. Really grateful for your coming so many times and bringing your gravitas and presence.
Gravitas, often maturity. Yes.
As long as the YouTube or the Google Corporation exists, I think this will be an archivable. It'll be somewhere there in the cloud. So, what do you want to say for posterity about your time here in China before you go back to the UK in 2 days?
Goodness me, that's a big one. What do I want to say about China? Basically, I have my disappointments, but I feel a great sense of loss as I'm about to leave.
Yeah.
It was a great ride, and I've had some really good times. I mean, I just particularly enjoyed traveling around China.
Yeah.
Both privately and on business, some very peculiar places. I met, it sounds like Miss World, isn't it? I met a lot of interesting people, and it's a fascinating culture. I don't particularly feel attuned to it.
Yeah.
I am a Western liberal at heart, and always will be, but I respect this culture. I think it's different. It's fascinating. And how, the fact, what was achieved in the last 30, 40 years, you can't take it away. I know it's going a bit sour at the moment, but then where isn't,
It's been a great ride. Is it still a great ride? We don't know, but I think all of us would agree it has been a great ride. I'm not sure Xi Jinping would like that phrase, and that may get to the heart of some of the tensions right now.
Exactly.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Sven. Thank you, Frank. Thank you.